Hello, 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 ladies. How are you both? Looking fabulous? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined live by Councillor Patience Bentu and Dr. Sondra Butterworth. Now, I think Sondra is having a bit of difficulty with her sound, but it will come through. That's how live works sometimes. I know she had some very important appointments beforehand, so she rushed in. And so as a result of that, her sound is still. So we're working on the sound, but we'll start first. That's why it's good sometimes to have two. Right. So this morning, it's another one, final one for the week in the Mastering Diversity Conference LinkedIn Lives. Because what we want to do is we want to focus on what it actually means to master diversity in our everyday lives, in the places that we work, in the communities in which we live, and in the spaces that we occupy. So I'll start first, Councillor Patience Bentu. Please say hello. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why it is that you believe it's so important to master diversity in Wales at this time.
Well, hi, Bernie. And first of all, I have to say thank you for the opportunity to come on your show. And I am so looking forward to the conference in a few weeks. It's only a few weeks now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, as you said, my name is Councillor Patience Bentu. I wear quite a few hats within the community and in my workspaces. But overall, I am here today as simply a member of the community in Wales. My work revolves around diversity and inclusion, and it is so important to us today in this 21st century with all that is going on. And, very simply put, for me, mastering diversity is mastering kindness. Very simply put.
Wow.
Kindness. I've not come here today to use a lot of official, words and jargons that we use in, workspaces. I've come here today to simplify what we need to understand by diversity. And for me, to be honest, it's just simply showing kindness. It's just simply showing respect for the differences that we have in our social and economic backgrounds, especially. And once and in showing that respect, all we need to do is, we don't need to understand our differences. We just need to respect it. It's as simple as that.
Yes, it is about finding unity in the common ground. That is one of the maxims that we have at our church in King's Church, Swansea, because it's a very diverse. It's a small church, but it is very diverse in terms of the people that attend. We have people from El Salvador, people from different African states. We have me from the Caribbean, people from different parts of Swansea. I think it represents true diversity, and it's just incredible. Yeah, and I see here Salamatu Jida Fada, PhD. He's saying hi to you, Councillor Patience. Listen, Salamatu, you can also engage. All of you are listening. Put your comments in the chat. If you have questions, put it in. It's our conversation. We need to find our place and our space. And how are we going to do it? By having these conversations. So let's see now, are we okay now, Dr. Sondra? Are you able to speak? Okay, let me add. You try. Oh, yes. So we're going to get rid of the other Dr. Sondra. So if that one leaves the room, yes, that's what happens when we're doing live, guys. That's what happens. If you come out of that one, Sondra, leave that one. Here we go. Where there's a will, we're women. We get things done. Nothing stops us women in business.
Oh, talk about stress. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yes, yes, yes. So now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Sondra Butterworth, founder of We're Called. She listen, her accolades are great. Listen, guys, she's here with us today to share in this conversation, and she is a woman who not just has her own ideas, but she thinks it's important to research and ascertain whether her ideas are founded and what other things are happening. I had the privilege of being at her conference earlier on in the year, Edira, where it was all about research into all the many facets of diversity. It was so incredible, that conference. But Dr. Butterworth, please, I'm going to give you the floor now. Introduce yourself to us.
Okay, so I'm Sondra Butterworth. I'm originally from Cardiff, actually, and I'm a community health psychologist. And I don't know, please say if you know of any more, but I believe I'm the only Black community health psychologist in Wales. And I actually started out as a nurse. I trained in Cardiff many moons ago, and then I became an educator. So I worked in universities and so on. And then I gradually became sort of aware in their sort of health and social care context that people from diverse communities were often excluded for various different reasons. And I think COVID has done something to exacerbate that and to raise people's awareness of how much exclusion there is. And what I wanted to be able to do is to look at reasons for exclusion and to be more inclusive, but very often to get better services for us, for our diverse communities, we have to have a voice. But sometimes, you know, the doors aren't open for us actually to share that voice. So it's a two-way thing, really. It's us speaking up, but it's others being prepared to hear what we're talking about. So that's where I'm coming from, really, in terms of inclusion and diversity. And yes, as you said, Bernie, thank you very much for coming to our conference.
Yes.
That was our Edira conference, which was Equality, Diversity and Inclusive Research Association. And we have another conference next year, so I'll tell you a bit more about that.
Fantastic. Listen, guys, there's a couple things. And in fact, I need to stop saying guys, because I'm the one that I tell people that we're learning. And this whole diversity and inclusion thing, it's dynamic, and what was okay to say before is not so okay to say. So I'm not disrespecting any of you when I say guys. I need to just stop. I need to change that from my vocabulary. So no disrespect to those of you who have a negative effect to the terminology, guys. I mean it with the greatest respect, and I will try to change it. So all, let's work on it. So all, yeah, my audience. Now, what I picked up from what both of you have said, and Patience, you started first, and you said it's about kindness. It is about kindness. It's basic humanity. And that is what the conference is all about. The Master in Diversity Conference 2023. It's all about us realizing that we have to demystify this whole diversity and inclusion conundrum. It is not that difficult if we understand that it's a humanity issue. It's about how we treat each other. It's about being prepared to speak, and as you said, Sondra, being prepared to speak up, but then also being prepared to listen. Yeah. Because like I said in my book, yes, I've got, it wouldn't go too far before I give the plug. The book is really what the principles are all about for this conference. It's all in this book. If you want to understand what she's on about, what does she want to achieve, get the book, right? Because it is pretty much about understanding that together we come with so many different things that could either alienate us, that could either make us offensive to others, suspicious. But the truth of the matter is, we all need to feel like we belong. And we need to think about the ones that they show up with invisible disabilities, invisible exclusions. So I would like to ask you ladies to just let's talk about that. How do we, as we go out and about, because as Patience rightly said, it is about just how do you react within the community. Forget our official positions. How do we identify those who really need us to support them in this whole diversity mission that we are on? So I'll start first with Patience.
Do you know, for me there, Bernie, the word that jumps out in that is intention.
Yes.
Be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Be intentional in the way that we respond to people. Be intentional in our actions towards people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, it's raising that consciousness that's within us, right? Towards people, towards the things that we do, and towards the way that we show up, you know, for ourselves and for other people. And I'll give you an instance, right? In racism, for instance, or in racial diversity,
Yes.
we talk about unconscious bias.
Yes.
And even though I have a problem, I think that's a very controversial theme for me in the sense of, you know, the actual meaning of unconscious bias.
Yes.
However, that word unconscious there is there because it is assumed that it's words and actions that are not within our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're aware of that and we accept that, why don't we draw ourselves? Because we have control of our emotions. We have control of our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We have control of our very being.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have the power inside of you to turn unconsciousness into conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do it is to be intentional in your words and actions towards other people. Be conscious about how people identify. Be conscious about how people feel within themselves. Be conscious of your interactions with people. Just be conscious of everything that you do. Do not take anyone else's feelings for granted.
Yes. You know, Patience, you said about unconscious bias, and I'll get back to you, Sondra. But it's something I talk about in the book because we need to, as you say, be deliberate in our intentions. And we need to ask ourselves questions. Sometimes we need to stop and we need to have a word with ourselves. We need to do some retrospection and some introspection. Because let's face it, I have had situations, and some of us would, and maybe some of us would, if you think about it, where you might take offense and you don't even know why you're taking offense. You're angry and you don't even know why you're angry. Right? For years, I was in the restaurant business, and it's something I noticed, right? No, don't you all start shouting at me and sending me any hate messages, but this is the truth. This is my truth. Yes, my truth is I could see where there were some people who were more open to getting a discussion about their performance from a man as opposed to a woman doing it. They were happy for me, the woman, to laugh and, oh, but if I am to call you to account for the work that you're doing, that I am paying you for in my own business, it didn't go down too well. And I first used to take offense to that. And then I started to realize they don't even realize why they're angry. They don't even realize where they're upset. It is so entrenched, this thing in a lot of sectors where people just believe that the man should be in charge, you know, and sometimes the white man should be in charge. Let's just call it. Don't send me any messages. It's my truth. Yes. And so we need to stop and ask ourselves, or somebody's from Cardiff, or somebody's from Swansea, somebody's from the valleys. Oh, they're from right, okay, you don't have any say here, and we don't even know why we're doing it. So when we actually have these conversations, and sometimes have these conversations with ourselves and ask ourselves, why didn't I like that? Really? Okay, did she actually say anything? And, don't tell yourself it's because it's not what they said, it's how they said it. That's a load of rubbish, right? It is how it made you feel. And why did it make you feel that way? I'm sorry I'm controversial this morning, but it's the truth. That's how we bring out unconscious bias, because you don't realize why you're doing it. You don't realize why it offends you. You don't realize why you'd rather have this particular person on your team as opposed to another particular person. And it might just be simply because of their gender, because of what part of Wales they're from, because of their color, because of things that you were told about those sets of people when you were growing up. Let us talk about even the travelers, the gypsy travelers. There's so many different people that face this kind of suspicion, and it's unconscious. But we need to, as you say, patients, stop giving ourselves the excuse of being unconscious. Let's get conscious about it, because everybody matters. It doesn't matter where they're from, the color of their skin, their educational background, their societal and socioeconomic backgrounds. Everybody matters. Let's be conscious and deliberate. Thank you for that. So, Dr. Sondra, what's your, please, coming now?
Hi. I've just written a blog actually called The Elephant in the Room. So very often I think that you people from our diverse communities, people who look like me, if you like, very often I work in two settings. I'm a researcher, I'm a healthcare professional and so on, but I also am a person of colour. And when I go to different places, like I might go to a research conference, for example, and out of 200 people, I might be the only person of colour there, because we don't do research, do we? Yeah. And so people like me don't do research. And so you very often hear the phrase, or I hear the phrase a lot, hard to reach. So I'm from a hard to reach community. Okay. So the blog I wrote recently is The Elephant in the Room is trust. So is it hard to reach communities or hard to trust professionals? Yeah. So it's a combination, really, but labels like that don't help anyone. So it's around, yes, we've got unconscious bias, but, it's based on fear. It's based on innate sort of things that you grow up with, where you're told, oh, don't talk to strangers, be aware of this, be aware of that. Anyone who is different might be a threat. And so very often they're just gut instincts and responses that are about fight and flight. So we sort of have to rationalize it and just think differently. I'm reminded of pre-internet days. Just shows old. Before I had my profile on LinkedIn, you couldn't Google me and everything. I remember going for an interview for a job, and I've got a lot of qualifications and so on. I have a master's degree and I have a PhD. I'm a qualified teacher. I was a nurse and so on, and I've had a lot of experiences. So my CV doesn't look like me. If someone saw my CV, you'd think, I can't be her. People like with this CV don't look like her. So I went for this interview, and this it was in a group of people in a sort of foyer, and the woman came out and she said, Sondra, and she's looking past me. She's looking past me. Sondra, she's looking. I felt like a child taking it. I'm here, because she wasn't expecting someone with that CV to look like me. And I think it's going into spaces that we don't usually go into. So we normalize diversity, and that's what your conference is doing. It's more than just people turning up. If you think of who the people represent, and they're coming in together in a space, there's a lot of unconscious learning going on. Yes, you've got the unconscious But there's lots of unconscious learning. Like, you know, with that example I just gave, the woman, she sort of took a second, or a few minutes, I should say, and it was like she's processing. Is she right? Is this person process? Is there a threat here? And then you could see it. It happens to me all the time. I have to give people a minute, and then it's like, she's not threatening, she's okay, and back in the room. Okay, can we carry on now, please? Because people are just not used to seeing people who are different in their space. They're not used to seeing people like you, Bernie, and like you, Patience, or like me. People are not, and you know, very often there's the perception that Black women are scared. Well, yeah, I can't be scary sometimes, all the time. I'm nice mostly, but we're scary Black women, you know, and too scared to approach us and everything. But no, you got to get over yourselves and just approach us and get in the room. Let us all sit in the space. Let's create. We've got diverse brains. We think differently to you. Maybe that we've got something that you haven't even thought of.
You said a lot of things. There are a lot of gems there. Just to interject, Salamatu would like you to tell him where the link is for your blog.
Oh, I can. It's on LinkedIn, actually.
It's on LinkedIn.
If you go on LinkedIn, I think I sent it a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
and it's got a big picture. Yeah. So
if you watch the scrolling banner, guys, I put the links to both ladies their LinkedIn, so you can connect with them on LinkedIn. Yes,
please connect with me. I am fabulous.
Awesome. But you know, you said a few things there, and you know, I've got to celebrate those amongst us that get it and are light years ahead of the others. Because yesterday I had a guest on, and his name is Andrew Martin, and he's the head of food and drink at Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre in North Wales. Now, Andrew is the typical subject. He is a white, middle-aged man in a high position. Now, I met Andrew through working with on a project, myself and Maggie Ogumbanwo, who is going to be at the conference. She's on the board of Food and Drink Wales. She's a food and drink producer, and she's also an author, erudite woman. Okay. Now, we both ran the project for 2 years, and Andrew was one of our greatest supporters in that project. He invited the cohort up to North Wales. We were treated incredibly well. But do you know what else I saw? I saw a very diverse team at the seat of innovation, a very diverse team. So I asked Andrew about that yesterday. And he said, you know, honestly, Bernie, and he gave me an example of somebody recently that he employed. And when the person came in for the interview, he said, you know, I sat there and I thought, you know what, I'm going to just speak with this person I'm just going to get to know them. There's an idea. Get to know. He said, and he spoke with the person for about an hour. And in the end, he gave them the job, because he found out so many things about this person. You know why? He was willing to understand. He was willing to drop his guard. He was willing to find out what's going on. And he said, this person is just incredible. But he said to me, he said, Bernie, I don't think that person would have gotten a job if they'd gone to another place, because he looks different. The presentation, but the jam and the talent that there is. And he says, I asked him how he got such a diverse team. Did he specifically? He said, listen, all we do, we don't look for diversity, he said, Bernie. We look for talent. And what we do is that we look far and wide for talent. Here's the idea. How about you say you can't find people? No, because you're not looking for them. Yes? Say they look far and wide, and they end up with such a diverse and talented. I mean, they're doing some stuff up there at AMRC. They're doing some they have now a new tractor which runs autonomously. That means you just program it and it just does its work in the field. That's the latest thing they do. They
Yeah,
do put it.
I could. I mean, he has to be prepared to share the space.
Yes.
That's what I find in the work
Yes.
that I do, because I work with board members and CEOs, etc. And very often they are white middle-aged men.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is I'm married to one of those.
Yes.
I'm married
Me
to a
too.
white middle-aged.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh snap.
Me too.
Yes. And as fabulous as they are,
Yeah.
they have their ways. And my husband used to be a counsellor, as in psychological counselling and everything, and we have very, very interesting conversations. And he grew up in a all white family. He didn't know any black people, etc. And then he gradually met me. But then we talk about things like this, and he said, the thing is, Sondra, you have to understand, and I do now, that men like me are used to being first, having the biggest piece of the pie, holding all the cards. That's what we're used to. And even if we have only 51% of the cards, that's only, we've had to give one of the cards away to the women. And now black people want a card. Oh, and now disabled people want a card. Oh, and now, and so on and so forth. And for someone else to be more equal, they feel that they are losing stuff.
Well, what
So
they have to
from his
understand, what they have to understand, and I'll let Patience respond to this as well.
Yeah.
What they have to understand is this: that it is what you stand to gain. What you stand to gain from letting go, because first of all, it was not yours to have had. It was wrong that you had all of that. Yes, and it brings me back to another guest that we had, Donna Ali, and Donna said, I don't like this word inclusion, Bernie, and I thought. What do you mean? Well, she had a point. She said, well, inclusion suggests that you own the space and you're just giving me a piece of it. And we need to evolve from that. And it does, it just takes me to the thing of some of the language that we have. Because language is programming. Words are powerful. And we've got to unlearn, like I said earlier about me using that G word. We've got to, we have got to understand that language is powerful. We've got to change the narrative, change the way and stop programming ourselves to continue in the same vein. Patience, please come in here.
It's really interesting, that thing about ownership of space and how for so many years men have held on to that monopoly. That they own spaces, be it's in the workplace or in the home, or I come from a background, in Africa, where women's voices were not heard. Women were to be seen, but not to be heard. So it's just another example of showing you the kind of ownership that men have of those spaces. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to see how diversity has evolved over the years. And I can understand how, having held on to that space for, decades, hundreds and hundreds of years, they would want to share it, with other protected characteristics right now. We're talking about diversity. So we're talking about disability. We're talking about gender. We're talking about sexual orientation. We're talking about faith. We're talking about race and all the other, protected characteristics as we know them in the Equality Act 2010. So it's really interesting the way the power dynamics are changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly,
And what that has done as well, Bernie, is it has, have you noticed, I don't know, both of you, you and Sondra, it has increased the amount of trolling that's going on. So the world has changed so much, such that in that, I don't want to, for want of a better word, let me use the word, in that clamor, for equal space within society, everyone easily gets offended.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, that is.
I'm offended if you say anything about women. I'm offended if you say anything about Black people. I'm offended if you say, everything. And I keep saying to people on a very light note, right, that one day we're going to wake up and the very oxygen that we breathe in is going to offend somebody.
No, but you know what? Listen, I have to Well said, Patience. And it just leads right into this comment from Ian. Ian, did you read my book? Because you clearly read my book. You are spot on, because that's one of the things that I say in this book. It's not just about black or white, okay? It's a series, this Mastering Diversity LinkedIn Live series, and it has a multiplicity of things. If you go back and you listen to all the other ones on my LinkedIn features, you will see that, Ian, that we're talking about a lot of things. Today, it's kind of gone a lot about the Cllr. But listen, in my book, I actually talk about the ginger and those other people and how they are affected, because my husband is ginger. And I tell you, he suffered, he struggled so much as a child being ginger. And people, yes, who are heavily tattooed. Yes, it's not just skin color. That's the reason for the Master in Diversity Conference. So people understand. It's one of the things that we talk today, that we're talking about it. But there are so many, as Patience says, so many characteristics, and they intersect, because the truth of the matter is, and I said it in my other lives, and I say it in my book. Listen, we are, myself, I am Black woman, yes, from Jamaica with an accent. I have privilege. I have privilege sometimes over other white people. My socioeconomic background gives me privilege over a lot of people. My education gives me privilege. Yes, the way I'm not obese, it gives me privilege. I have no disability. Some might argue that there might be something wrong with the brain, but no apparent, medical disability. That's the truth. Okay? So how dare me walk into a space and assume that the white woman or the white man has nothing that they are struggling with. That is unconscious bias as well. We are just as guilty if that's how we think. So thank you for bringing that. And that's a point I make in my book, and I go on about it. That in it and of itself is unconscious bias. Yes, because...
can I just add something there, for Ian as well? The thing is, diversity is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
But we shouldn't make it the window dressing. We shouldn't make it the icing on top of cake. There's no way that we can talk about diversity, because when we talk about diversity, yes, it's that equality, isn't it? It's getting all the different perspectives, all the different protected characteristics represented and everything. But true representation really lies in inclusion. And so we can't talk about diversity without talking about inclusion. That is where equity happens.
Yes.
Because for me, it's not just getting the numbers in, it's not just getting equality in, is giving all those diverse people or diverse characteristics the right tools and removing the barriers that's along their way to thrive.
Yeah, and I'll go even further to that, Patience, to say it's also about belonging. Because you include people, you can have people included, and it's just, and it's just they're all there and they feel excluded in that inclusive space.
Yes,
it's how you treat them when you include them. Haven't we all been in a space, and you're alive long enough, as long as this, you have been in spaces, whether you're white, you're ginger, you're whatever, you have been in spaces where you felt, I don't really belong here. All right. What made you feel that? Yeah, it's how the people who were in control of that particular space at that particular time, it's how that person influenced the others in the room or space to make you feel. Nobody made that effort to make you feel that you belonged in that space. And how could that actually have happened, or could that obtain? By making your voice something that one wants to hear, by not cutting you off when you're speaking. When we're in meetings, you dismiss people's opinions. Oh, we'll talk about that another time. But then you give somebody else, airspace to talk all sorts of foolishness. We've been in those meetings. Some of us have been the ones who have been shut up. Some of us, unfortunately, have been the ones who've shut people up. Let's call a spade, because we're not perfect. Okay, we all learning this thing, right?
Where's the equity? Where's the equity?
Yeah.
Where's the equity?
Where is the equity? And people don't understand the difference between equity and equality.
Equality, yeah.
It's equity and equality, and I go into it in my book. Yes, another
good. Sometimes,
yeah.
We had a conversation about your conference, which is going to be brilliant. I'm so looking forward to it. But it feels as though it's going to be, I call things like a diversity boot camp. You know, when you it's almost going to be like that. There may be people who come to the conference who haven't, I meet people still who haven't had a conversation with a person of colour. I meet people, you know, I go into areas where it's mainly men who are talking about whatever, and you know, they don't usually get an opportunity to speak to women about that. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, one of those things I often say is that sometimes when you get people who don't mix in diverse spaces, that you almost feel as this should be a compulsory that they spend some time in a diversity boot camp where they have, if they're a man, there's a woman there. If they're straight, there's someone, you know, from LGBTQ plus and so on, all protected characteristics in a space, and just talk about stuff. Yes. Just to break down.
It would be eye-opening. It would be eye-opening, because I tell you, you know, back to, because Ian's point is, you know, is about, you know, who is standing up for these people. And Christina saying it is belonging that is key. How can we make people feel like they belong? And I have this exercise which I do every time I do my training on allyship, and it blows my mind every time that it comes out just so true, and it blows the people in the room's minds. Because we have these assumptions about people, and that, just like what Ian says, we believe the white person fits in when they have all these tattoos on their eyes that's right and their hair not right, and we think, oh, they're all right, you are right, you're white, you know, you don't know what I'm going through, you know, and we don't want to give them a moment. But when I do that exercise, and the rooms are usually diverse, and I go through them, ticking different aspects of privilege, and then I say, okay, these 8 aspects of privilege I put there. How many of you have identified with 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Okay. And then I ask the ones that have at least identified from 1 to 3 to 1. And invariably, a whole lot of white people are standing. Yes. And there are black people in the room sitting on their butts, because they have a lot of privilege, because they're really, you know what I'm saying? Right? Black, Asian, all sorts of different people sitting on their butts. And one of the times, I've said it before, but it's in my book. One of the times I did it, this young lady, she, after I moved on from that slide and continued, she stopped me. And she said, Bernie, I've got to say something, because I've not been able to hear anything. It's been white noise ever since you did that slide. Can I ask you a question? And I said, what? She said, what if you couldn't put 1 up? That is 0 privilege. Well, you could have heard a pin drop. The rest is history. There were tears in the room. My whole workshop changed. She came up to the front, and I mean, honestly, because listen, some people have not experienced in their journey ever a sense of belonging, ever a sense of privilege. And we need to be aware of that. So this conference, you're quite rightly said, boot camp. Come on, guys. Let's pull ourselves up together by our bootstraps. Let's together. That's what this series is all about. Let's together. 1, commit to learn ourselves, because we don't know everything. Open our minds to the fact that we don't know everything. I'll tell you what happened yesterday. A young lady messaged me. Well, not just a young lady, a quite eminent, erudite lady from overseas, because I saw her thing. I was like, oh, this woman is like powerful. And she said, have you had any feedback about your mastering, your title, Mastering Diversity? And I was like, oh, what's this now? I said, could you explain? She said, well, you know that term mastering, it's a trigger for a lot of people, black people, because of the fact that back in those days with the master and so on, and it's something that people are moving away from using, mastering. And I said, wow, in that moment, the teacher, me, was being schooled because I didn't understand that there are these words that are triggering, and she said to me, don't worry, because I said, I can't change my book title and my conference title. How do I fix? She said, don't worry, just when you say it, just make a note of that it might trigger some people, and just say, well, from being mastered to mastering, and I thought, yes. She was so lovely as well, So it was a perfect example of two things. One, where you might miss certain things that could affect other people in this journey that we are all on. But then in the fact that she was gracious enough to me to take on board that I wasn't there yet. I didn't understand it. And then even gave me a way to deal with it for those who might be in the audience that might be triggered by it. And that's a lesson for us all.
It is. It's a journey. It's like people have gone from that perspective of people being mastered to being in control and being. So it's a journey, which whoever that lady is, she's very wise. That's wonderful to say that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Just out of curiosity, Bernie, just to take you back on what you said about the group that you were talking to on privilege.
Yes.
And I was just wondering in my head if those people actually understood the meaning of privilege and what it means, to be privileged.
Yes.
And wondering if they were probably misinterpreting it to mean white privilege as opposed to black privilege. But, I just look at privilege based on John Amaechi. I think he's awesome when it comes to talking about equality and diversity. And his interpretation of privilege as the absence of inconvenience. So, in any context you look at it, all of us, I want to believe, would have had one form of privilege or the other in our lives.
Yes. What I do, this is the exercise for the purposes of, for those who are listening to understand. I give 8 questions, 8 statements, and can you identify as those 8 statements applying to you? That's the context in which this privilege is ascertained. So I have never heard a colleague make a cruel joke about people like me. Is that true for you? My colleagues don't comment about my culture or religion in ways that make me feel excluded or demeaned. Is that true for you? No one has ever asked me to touch my hair at work. 4, co-workers don't confuse me with others of my race. I rarely hear comments suggesting I'm not dressed professionally enough. People rarely or never call me emotional when I express my opinion at work. I can talk about my personal life without feeling like I'm coming out or explaining myself. I don't often feel othered by the words my colleagues used. So that's what I was using. As you rightly say, this is not, this is all privilege, but this was just a set of questions that a lot of people don't think about and my training is in the work context, and so that was how those questions were framed. And this lady couldn't find that she had one of them. Well, let me just.
Can I make a comment? It's interesting about this. Going back to my husband again, he's not even watching, so he doesn't even know I'm giving him all this praise. But anyway, he says, going back to, when you talk about men like him, he said he has never been discriminated against. He's never felt he doesn't belong. He's never gone to somewhere and thought, I won't be allowed in because of X. He's never had accessibility issues where he can't get into a building because of whatever. No one's ever said anything to him because of the way he looks. He's sort of, as we have these conversations, he's recognizing that he's sort of in a bubble. And I do work around race equality and general equality, diversity, and so on. And when I have these conversations, I try to be in a non-threatening way and allow people to ask me anything, really. And some of the people I've spoken to, they've said that I feel as though I've been in a bubble. I have no idea that people wouldn't be allowed in there. I have no idea that people will get stared at because of this, or not allowed this, or can't have this. And because I have this, and it is, the word privilege is triggering for some people, but we're all privileged to a certain extent,
Yes,
or most
yes,
of us are.
yes.
But for some reason, there are people who find that it's triggering and it's like an insult. But
Yes.
I know I'm privileged.
Yes.
Somebody accused me of having pretty privilege the other day. I was like, what? I've never heard of that one.
Oh,
Like,
I had pretty privilege. Let me tell you. I had pretty privilege. For all the time I lived in and worked and studied, I studied in probably I should name the country. I got pretty privilege because I was literally told that I am allowed. I can go into the yacht club or wherever because I was a pretty darky.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. Oh yes. So yes, there is such a thing called pretty privilege.
Yeah. So, there are people who go around in the world and they don't experience the world in the way that other people do.
Exactly.
So everybody go to the boot camp and just learn from each other.
So we're having some participation here. Let's get this now. So Ian says, one thing we could all unify under is patriotism. That's true. we all know about patriotism. It seems that this has become unfashionable or become old-fashioned. If you could find a way to be a proud nation again as one, that may be a fair starting point. Yes, fantastic. I agree. Now let me just put this other one out so we're gonna deal with these two because we're coming, we're winding down. Okay, and then Theresa says, hi Ian. That would be great, but it's difficult to discount the historical context. And I think that is in direct response to the statement before Ian about, we're talking about race, but what about all these people? She says, that would be great, but it's difficult to discount the historical context of the division of people based on race, class, disability, and gender, and how that could play a part in many sectors today. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Bernie, I think Teresa's hit the nail in the head there with it. She's got a smack band in response to Ian. Yes. Now, patriotism is really a good starting point, but we cannot say, that we all want to be patriotic in the context of Wales if we've got all this, history of divisions based on all the things that Teresa has listed there. It's like, say, for example, you remember, during COVID with the killing of George Floyd and the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And, the counter campaign to that was all lives matter. Stop saying all lives matter. Well, the simple response to that was, yes, we would love to say that all lives matter, but we cannot say that all lives matter if Black lives don't matter.
Yeah, and not all lives are under threat at the same way.
This is exactly what Teresa is talking about. Yes, Ian, we can all be patriotic, and that is what we really want. That is the future, for Wales that we're looking at. And this is why we have to stand together. We have to fight to bring down those barriers that exclude people on the basis of race, class, disability, gender, sexual orientation, and so on, until we address those issues.
Yes. I agree. And also with the patriotism, I don't know if you guys get this when you're asked, where are you from? And I say, I'm Welsh. And the look is, well, you can't be. I want to be patriotic. I was born here, raised in Cardiff. I live in North Wales. I'm patriotic, but to someone like me can't be from Wales.
Oh, and
where are you really from?
And that's the point that I make as well in this book. I have written this book about diversity and inclusion, and I've specifically focused on Wales because this is my home, and I say that in the book. This is my home. And this is where I want to be an influence for change. I want
Yes.
to bloom where I am planted. Yes, I might have originated in the Caribbean, but I am here now and I am giving all that I can to help to make Wales the country that it can be and that it is, but we want to make it like that or in more places in Wales, not just in certain patches of Wales. You know, it's got to be something that we can develop and that will live beyond us. So Ian says, I totally get that, and it's hard to argue. However, won't history always be there? Therefore, may it not hold us back forevermore? No, because we write in history. I love you.
Yes.
What?
This is a new history.
We are rewriting history, Ian. Yes. So
We're
history is there.
we're creating history, and your
Yes.
conference will be doing that. It will be doing that.
We
It's a
all
new
do it. We all doing it. I honestly believe that in the same way you have in the historical account of the Welsh religious revival there, I believe there's going to be an account of the revival, the cultural revival, the community, the changes that took place in what otherwise people used to historically call a racist country. Because that's when I was moving down to Wales from Bradford, I was told that Wales is racist. And I'm telling you now, I have never been felt so much welcome, so much unconditional acceptance, so many open doors. That's the truth. And I say it in this book, so many open doors. In fact, an advantage, that's my truth. An advantage in many spaces I went into because I was Black, because I was from the Caribbean, because I had an accent. I stood out. People remember, even though I'm embarrassed, people remember me because I still stand out. They remember my name and I don't even know them. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm smiling and waving. I can't remember them, but remember me. The advantage of being in the minority. Okay, now I also experienced some serious racism as well here in Wales from a certain sector, and it was really bad and sustained. So I'm telling you, the realities both are there, but I want it by all of what we do, by us going together and doing each of us doing our bit. Patience in all of her work that she does. Yes. Sondra with all of what you do. Ian, Teresa, all these incredible people that I have interviewed so far. Donna Ali, Andrew Martin, Damian Bridgman. Oh my goodness. If I don't call your name, it's not because you're good. Tom Golick, Dr. Amoraju, Shazia Hussein. All these people are doing their bit. And I specifically made it Welsh focused this conference, and most of the people that are going to be delivering and making a change are Wales based, because I believe we have all we need to get this right. Now we're coming up to the yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and I agree with you, because Wales really stands out, right?
Yes.
In the campaigns, for equality, for diversity, for inclusion. And don't forget that Wales is recorded in history as the first country in the world to pass the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And in those 7 sustainable goals, we must stand,
Wow.
to see the Wales that we really want, a Wales that is more diverse, a Wales that is more inclusive, a healthier Wales, a richer Wales, a Wales of, cohesive communities, a more equal Wales, and all of those sustainable goals. So the will is there. It's left to us as individuals, and that is the starting point for me, really. You look inward at yourself, the kind of thoughts that you have towards other people. And this is taking us back to, my first statement about kindness. But think inside of you, be intentional, be conscious of your thoughts about other people, of your actions towards other people, and how you can change that today, how you can act today so that together as a community, we build a stronger Wales, a Wales that in years to come, we can turn around and say, together we went, in your words, Bernie, together we did it for the future of Wales.
Awesome. That is fantastic. We're coming up to the last few minutes. And, I just would like, Dr. Sondra, if you just, add anything that you'd like to say now before because we're winding down.
Yeah. I mean, the conference, our Equality, Diversity and Inclusive Research Association conference, was about inclusion. And yes, it does suggest that we have been excluded, but we want more inclusion of everybody. And we had an underpinning sort of theme of saying it's a road less travelled. But we are all on this road together. We're all in Wales. We're all on this road together. We're coming to the Mastering Diversity boot camp. And, we can make really, really good things happen. We just have to be able to share, try to feel non-threatening or non-threatened, be non-threatening, and share and learn from each other, come together as a community of practice, that practice being diversity.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Ian. Yes, rewriting history probably was not the best choice of words. We are writing this part of history. Yes, yes. So I take that on board 100%. Yes. And it's not a racist country, and we are now writing history. So when people look back, it will see how things have evolved. But I would like to just share a little bit from, I'm going to solo myself. Why not? I'm spotlight myself and read this bit from the book as to the rationale, not just for this book, but the conference itself. So guys, you need to get your ticket. So I'd like to dedicate this book, I can call this conference, because it's what this conference is based on, the book, to all the little girls, whether black, white, or whatever, who once feared they would never be heard. All the little girls who suffered shame, rejection, bullying, insecurities, and felt they just did not quite fit in. All the young women who have suffered violence. These are all the people that we need to think about in this thing. Domestic abuse, discrimination, being misunderstood, and not being quite able to speak up. I want to dedicate this book, this conference, to the young boys who struggle to find their place, to know who they are, and figure out what being a real man is all about, because they did not have a daddy who showed them. I would like to dedicate this book conference, you can interchange them, to all the disabled, to all the nerds, and all the people that are displaced in one way or another. Displaced geographically, displaced by ideals, displaced by religious affiliation, displaced by sexual orientation, displaced by limiting capabilities, displaced by not thinking, feeling, and acting and being what the world calls normal. I would just like to dedicate this book conference to the incredible potpourri of people, nations, cultures, creed, cognitions, and ways of being that is the fabric of which the Welsh landscape is comprised. And why do I want to focus on Wales? Wales is now my home. It has been since 2006. But most importantly, it is the place I became acutely aware of the importance of deliberate diversity. I won't read anymore. I'll just close with this. This is why I'm writing this book about mastering diversity, and even more so why I will be focusing most of my research on Wales. Wales is now my home, and there is a saying that charity begins at home. So we're starting right where we are. So my focus is not to heal the world. My focus is to heal my world, my beautiful, green, lush world, Wales, and to bloom where I am planted. So, guys, honestly, and that's my heart there. Get the book. Yes, understand our heart. This is not about, thank you. We're not bashing anybody. We go nowhere and get nowhere bashing. We get there when we be kind. Back to where Patience started. We are people. We need to just be kind. We need to be considered. We need to ask ourselves, how would we have liked to be treated? Yes, Michaela, it's probably more a matter of reframing history and providing full stories, not rewriting. Absolutely. Yes, final last word. So guys, it's Friday.
Oh,
We've
yes.
completed another week. Yes, yes. Go forth, enjoy, keep the conversation going. Yes.
Yeah.
We're
And
taking-
see you at the conference.
See you at the conference at the boot
Absolutely.
Boot
Looking
camp.
forward to it.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Camp. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
An absolute thank you, guys. Thank you. And
Thank you so much for having us today.
Oh, pleasure. You're the audience. You've been fantastic. You've been amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Until another time. Brilliant. Don't leave us.
See you soon, Sondra.
We're staying on. We're staying on. Okay. Okay.
Bye, all. Have a great Friday,
everyone.
All right.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Awesome.